Article 210.52 of the National Electrical Code addresses receptacle placement for countertops in dwelling units. Specifically, it focuses on the requirements for receptacles serving countertop surfaces. The exception to this rule deals with situations where the countertop extends beyond the cabinet frame. It is important to understand this exception correctly to ensure code compliance and safety. The exception in 210.52 states that a receptacle is not required if the countertop extends less than 6 inches beyond the frame of the cabinet. Therefore, the statement that a receptacle is not required if the countertop extends 6 inches or more is incorrect. The code intends to minimize long stretches of countertop without receptacles to prevent the use of extension cords, which can be a safety hazard. To fully grasp the meaning of this exception, it is essential to consider the main rule of 210.52 code, which mandates that receptacles be installed so that no point along the wall line of the countertop is more than 24 inches, measured horizontally, from a receptacle outlet. This ensures that appliances used on the countertop can be plugged in without the need for extension cords that might run across the countertop. This primary requirement establishes the general rule, and the exception provides a limited allowance for short countertop extensions. Understanding the relationship between the general rule and the exception is crucial for proper application of the code. Let's examine a few scenarios to illustrate the application of this rule. Firstly, if a countertop extends 5 inches beyond the cabinet frame, the exception applies, and a receptacle is not required for that particular extension. Secondly, if the countertop extends 7 inches beyond the cabinet frame, the exception does not apply, and a receptacle is required to serve that countertop area, provided the general rule regarding maximum spacing between receptacles is not already met by another receptacle. Thirdly, if the countertop extends exactly 6 inches beyond the cabinet frame, the exception does not apply and a receptacle is required. The threshold is less than 6 inches for the exception to be valid. When interpreting any section of the NEC, it is always wise to refer to the definition of terms used. The NEC defines a receptacle as a contact device installed at the outlet for the connection of an attachment plug. An outlet is defined as a point in the wiring system at which current is taken to supply utilization equipment. These definitions help to clarify the intent of the code and ensure consistent application. It is also useful to consult with local electrical inspectors or licensed electricians to clarify any questions about code interpretation or application. It can provide valuable insights based on their experience and knowledge of local amendments or interpretations of the NEC. Beyond the specific requirements of 210.52 it is important to consider the broader context of countertop receptacle placement within the kitchen. The NEC provides additional requirements for receptacle placement in island and peninsula countertops, as well as general requirements for spacing receptacles to serve all countertop surfaces. These requirements are designed to ensure that kitchens have an adequate number of receptacles to serve the appliances typically used in these areas. Also, consider the type of countertop that you have. Some countertops require more receptacles due to its uses. For example, if you have a cooking area that is on the countertop, then more receptacles might be needed. This is because the NEC aims to minimize the use of extension cords. The NEC also specifies requirements for ground fault circuit interrupter, or GFCI, protection for receptacles serving countertops in dwelling units. GFCI protection is required for receptacles located within 6 feet of a sink or wet location to protect against electrical shock hazards. These requirements are intended to enhance electrical safety in kitchens, which are often wet environments. In summary, the exception to 210.52 states that a receptacle is not required if the countertop extends less than 6 inches beyond the frame of the cabinet. This exception should be interpreted in conjunction with the general rule requiring receptacles to be spaced no more than 24 inches apart along the wall line of the countertop. Careful consideration of these requirements, along with other applicable rules in the NEC, is essential for ensuring code-compliant and safe electrical installations in kitchens. When designing or installing electrical systems in kitchens, it's always a good idea to consult with qualified professionals who can provide expert guidance and ensure that all work is performed in accordance with applicable codes and standards. Furthermore, remember that electrical codes are updated periodically to reflect changes in technology and best practices. Staying current with the latest edition of the NEC is essential for anyone involved in electrical work. Understanding the nuances of the NEC can be challenging, but it is a critical aspect of ensuring electrical safety. The code is intended to protect people and property from electrical hazards, and compliance with its provisions is essential for all electrical installations. By taking the time to study and understand the NEC, you can help to create safer electrical environments for yourself and others. Remember that the NEC is a complex document, and it is always advisable to seek professional guidance when in doubt. Consulting with licensed electricians or electrical inspectors can help you to interpret the code correctly and ensure that your electrical installations are code compliant and safe. To further illustrate the application of 210.52C5, let's consider a specific example. Imagine a kitchen countertop that is 30 inches deep. The base cabinets below the countertop are also 24 inches deep. This means the countertop extends 6 inches beyond the front of the cabinets. In this scenario, the exception in 210.52C5 does not apply because the countertop extends exactly 6 inches, not less than 6 inches. Therefore, a receptacle would be required to serve this section of countertop, assuming that the general rule regarding maximum spacing between receptacles is not already met by another receptacle. Now let's consider a different scenario. Suppose the same kitchen countertop is 30 inches deep, but the base cabinets are 25 inches deep. This means that the countertop extends 5 inches beyond the front of the cabinets. In this case, the exception in 210.52C5 does apply because the countertop extends less than 6 inches beyond the cabinet frame. Therefore, a receptacle would not be required for this particular countertop extension, although the general rule regarding maximum spacing between receptacles would still need to be considered for the overall countertop area. It is important to note that even if the exception in 210.52C5 applies, other requirements in the NEC may still necessitate the installation of a receptacle. For example, if the overall countertop area is large enough that the distance between receptacles exceeds 24 inches, additional receptacles would be required to comply with the general rule. The NEC is a comprehensive document that addresses a wide range of electrical issues. It is not possible to cover every aspect of electrical safety in a single discussion. However, by focusing on key concepts and providing clear explanations, it is possible to gain a better understanding of the code and its intent. Always remember to prioritize safety when working with electricity. Electrical work can be dangerous, and it is important to take precautions to protect yourself and others from electrical hazards. These precautions can include wearing appropriate personal protective equipment such as gloves and eye protection, and energizing circuits before working on them. One should also use properly insulated tools and equipment. If you are not comfortable working with electricity, it is best to hire a qualified electrician to do the work for you. Electricity is a powerful force, and it should be treated with respect. By following safe work practices and complying with the NEC, you can help to prevent electrical accidents and injuries. Remember that understanding the NEC is an ongoing process. The code is updated regularly, and there are always new things to learn. By staying informed and seeking professional guidance when needed, you can continue to improve your knowledge and skills in the field of electrical safety. Another important consideration is the location of receptacles with respect to sinks and other wet locations. As mentioned earlier, the NEC requires GFCI protection for receptacles located within 6 feet of a sink. This requirement is intended to protect against electrical shock hazards in wet environments. When installing receptacles near sinks, it is important to ensure that they are properly grounded and protected by a GFCI device. GFCI devices are designed to detect ground faults, which can occur when electricity leaks from a circuit to ground. When a ground fault is detected, the GFCI device quickly trips the circuit, interrupting the flow of electricity and preventing electrical shock. GFCI protection is an important safety feature that can save lives. Another important aspect of countertop receptacle placement is accessibility. The NEC requires that receptacles be readily accessible, meaning that they should be easily reached without the need to climb over or move objects. This requirement is intended to ensure that people can easily plug in and unplug appliances without having to struggle or risk injury. When planning receptacle placement, it is important to consider the height of the countertop and the location of appliances that will be used on the countertop. Receptacles should be placed in a location that is convenient and accessible for all users. In addition to the specific requirements for countertop receptacles, the NEC also includes general requirements for receptacle spacing throughout a dwelling unit. These requirements are intended to ensure that there are an adequate number of receptacles to serve the needs of the occupants. The general rule is that receptacles should be spaced no more than 12 feet apart along each wall line. This means that there should be a receptacle within 6 feet of any point along the wall. This requirement applies to all habitable rooms in a dwelling unit, including living rooms, bedrooms, and dining rooms. In kitchens, the countertop receptacle requirements take precedence over the general receptacle spacing requirements. However, it is important to ensure that the overall number of receptacles in the kitchen is sufficient to meet the needs of the occupants. It is important to consider future needs when planning receptacle placement. As technology evolves, new appliances and devices are constantly being introduced. It is a good idea to install extra receptacles in strategic locations to accommodate future needs. This can save time and money in the long run by avoiding the need to add receptacles later. When adding receptacles, it is important to ensure that the electrical system has sufficient capacity to handle the additional load. Overloading circuits can create a fire hazard, so it is important to consult with a qualified electrician to determine the appropriate size of the circuit breaker and wiring. In addition to the NEC requirements, there may be local codes or regulations that apply to receptacle placement. It is important to check with your local building department or electrical inspector to determine if there are any additional requirements in your area. Local codes may be more restrictive than the NEC, so it is important to comply with all applicable regulations. Remember that electrical codes are constantly evolving to reflect changes in technology and best practices. It is important to stay informed about the latest code requirements to ensure that your electrical installations are safe and compliant. Subscriptions to trade magazines or online resources are useful. Also, take continuing education courses for electricians to keep their knowledge current. In conclusion, understanding the NEC requirements for countertop receptacle placement is essential for ensuring safe and code-compliant electrical installations in kitchens. The exception in 210.52 C5 states that a receptacle is not required if the countertop extends less than 6 inches beyond the frame of the cabinet. This exception should be interpreted in conjunction with the general rule requiring receptacles to be spaced no more than 24 inches apart along the wall line of the countertop. By carefully considering these requirements, along with other applicable rules in the NEC, you can help to create safer electrical environments for yourself and others. Remember to prioritize safety when working with electricity and to consult with qualified professionals when in doubt. The NEC is designed to prevent electrical hazards, and compliance with its provisions is essential for all electrical installations. Staying up to date with the latest code requirements is crucial for anyone involved in electrical work, and seeking professional guidance can help ensure that your electrical installations are safe, compliant, and meet the needs of the occupants.